No mucking around tonight. We're heading straight to the Shire because the deal has been done. Roosters assistant coach Craig FITZGIBBON will be the next head coach of the Cronulla Sharks, with the final terms agreed between both parties this afternoon. We'll get to the murky details of how the deal was pulled together today. A little later, right now, Brent Reed's got some fresh information that's come through just as we're about to come on air.
So there's been a text that's gone to the players in the last text message gone to the players in the last half hour that John Morris has gone immediately, and that Josh HANNAY will take over as the interim coach for the remainder of this year. So John Morris here is over. So
the FITZGIBBON news has got through to the current coach, and he said, enough's enough, I'm not standing for that, I'm out the door.
FITZGIBBON signed a 3-year deal about 4 o'clock this afternoon. The deal was done. $1.5 million roughly. Immediately after that, Chairman Dino Mezzatesta, Chief Executive Dino Mezzatesta had a meeting with John Morris, informed him what had happened. They negotiated where each sat for the remainder of the season, and as Reedy just said, the decision was made for John Morris to end effective immediately.
Can I just start on the Morris news? Do you think that's the smart play from Morris?
I think it was an untenable situation. They've told him that they don't rate him. They don't rate him as a guy that can get them to the top 4. 5 rounds into a new season, he's basically... You give players an out in this game and they'll take advantage of it every time. I don't care who's on your staff. You take away the power of a coach and automatically he has no power. And to me, while I'm not questioning that, Craig FITZGIBBON has got all the credentials to be a very, very good rugby league coach. What Cronulla have done here, once again, has shown their inexperience, their lack of class.
I don't know how else you could have done it, Cross. I don't know how else you could have handled it.
You don't do it 5 rounds into a season.
Well, but the Roosters wanted
to do it at the start of the season.
The Roosters wanted to know, but Cross, and the agreement wasn't done then. They didn't have an agreement in place with Craig FITZGIBBON at the start of the season.
But Reedy,
they had to work through it.
With Fitzy was done today.
Okay, well, I'll tell you another thing.
And if Fitzy was not the right man, or was unavailable, or was not going to turn up at Cronulla, then John Morris might have been the next best available.
Ben made 1,000 good points last night when he was talking about this, and he was talking about the problems. I didn't agree with him, so but clearly the problems that John Morris has had to contend with in the past few years. He's been working $700,000 under the cap. He's been dealing with a player roster
under a cap,
$350 each season.
Years.
He's been dealing with a player roster that, let's face it, was very, very difficult to deal with. Some of those players, they're not easy work. He's got them to the final 8. You can talk about his win percentage record. A lot of coaches don't have a better one. In the NRL, you've got the top 4 clubs, and you've got a lot of guys that hover around that 47 to 40% win ratio. And for Craig FITZGIBBON, there's no question that his pedigree and what he's already got on the board as an assistant coach sets him up to be a fine coach. That's not the question. The question is Cronulla the right club for him to be kicking off his career?
If you put Craig FITZGIBBON and John Morris in front of 16 CEOs tomorrow and said to them, take your pick, how many would take John Morris?
Not saying it's a bad signing.
None.
For Cronulla.
None. So what if you've got the opportunity? If you've got the opportunity to get Craig FITZGIBBON,
you've done the wrong thing by this guy. I don't care what you say, Paul, it completely lacks class. And I'll tell you another thing.
So what, so you just invoke the good bloke rule? Because he's a good bloke, you just keep him in the job.
No, it's not a matter of being a good bloke. How's he been proven to be a bad coach?
You know what his record is? You know what his record is against the big 6 clubs? Melbourne, South, the Roosters, Penrith, Parramatta, Canberra. And since the start of last season, 0-11. 0-11. He has not beaten a top quality side since the start of last year. His record during his tenure, in 21 games, he's won 4 against those 6 clubs.
Yeah, well,
4.
You've got a point there.
So how does he have a mortgage on the head? How does he have a mortgage on the job?
He's had a mortgage on it, Reedy.
He hasn't been in charge.
It's the way they've gone about it, mate.
He hasn't been in charge of a top quality side.
Yeah, but
if you compare John Morris and the job he's done at the Sharks with the resources at his disposal, in the environment he works in, with the restraints he's got on the
resources at his disposal, what's he lacking there?
Because they're not a wealthy club.
They are now.
Well, they've got the same salary cap as every other team.
And the
I'm
same
not
footy
talking.
cap.
Well, they haven't got the same salary cap. They've been $350,000 down each year.
Oh,
when I talk
agree
about resources, I'm talking about the football department, the number of staff, the facilities that are available. There's a whole stack of things that go into the mix when you're working as a coach. And compared to the big 6 clubs that you just mentioned, or the big 4 clubs, he hasn't got the same.
And he's also a young coach. Like they appointed him for a reason. And they gave him 2 years in the job. And you can talk about his win-loss record and who he's won against and the fact that he hasn't.
Important. His win-loss record's pretty important when you're a head coach.
He's got him to the top 8.
It's
in 2 seasons. And he's got him to the top 8. Did you expect that Cronulla roster to go better?
Twice.
Did you?
No, but I didn't expect them.
No, you didn't.
I didn't expect them to go better, but I didn't expect them to go a lot worse either. I think they are a middle of the table club. No, I think they're a middle of the table club. That's where they're at. So that's exactly where he's at.
Shane Flanagan took over the side in 2011, won a comp in 2016. You know, so John Morris has done pretty well to finish finals both years. And let's not deny it that the squad that Craig Fitzgibbon is going to inherit is full of quality players that John Morris coached as youngsters and brought into the system and has them ready now to grow again.
16 players, did he debut? Something like that.
They're about to cut a swathe through the roster. They've got about 10
but
players off contract.
Not necessarily the younger players, not the Will Kennedys of the world and that sort of stuff.
Will not be this roster. This roster will be decimated.
Which is what John Morris wants to crack at, the $4 million so he can go to market.
You can't argue both ways.
Ben,
you're arguing that.
Ben,
you can't argue both ways. You can't argue all the players you brought through.
Don't twist my words. I'll say it exactly how it is. The young players that he's brought through are not the players he inherited. I'm talking about the young players that he's brought through.
Every club brings through players.
Under John Morris. This is you can't deny it.
Wasn't John Morris
Ben's trying to say is he's got the roster and an opportunity now to move forward with his own roster and also young guys that he's brought into his system. At that point, you throw him out.
So, well, look, what gets unsaid in all this is the amount of support the club have got for the decision they've made from the players. And when you see players publicly talk and they're all supporting John Morris, privately it's a different story.
Ben, have you ever encountered this before, players blowing up about a coach and then a new coach comes in and within a year they'll be blowing about him?
Listen, I've been through the process where I've seen a coach get appointed off the back of the last coach getting the sack because the players were disgruntled, so you make the change. I think it was as short as 2 or 3 months into a pre-season and the players start complaining again, only to see the coach go on and take the club to a premiership. Players are built to complain, and sitting in behind the players are their agents. So rugby league constantly agitates.
But to your point, about you said they started to complain, then he went on to take them to a grand final. The players here are complaining, and yet what was they're 0-11 against the top 6 teams. They're not winning. This group's not winning. They need someone to come in and turn over the roster.
I'll tell you what, there'd be a few clubs that would have wanted to have played finals the last 2 years.
Ben, I would say,
you can't deny that. I'm not saying that Craig Fitzgibbon won't come in and do a better job either. But I just believe that John Morris, based on what I've seen so far in this 2 years, deserved the chance to build on what he's done.
So you just invoked the good bloke rule. How long does he get that?
How has good bloke got to do with good coaching? I'm telling you, I believe he's a good coach.
When you watched that game on the weekend, I think it was Vossi calling the game on the weekend, and the way they started the game, Vossi said at the time, I'm thinking it at home, I reckon everyone that was watching the game says the same thing. They are a well-coached team. You can't say he didn't do a good job as a football coach. There's so many other factors
he's a very good
coach. That club.
Technically, and you're right, technically very good coach, technically knows his stuff, but there are other things. For example, for the last 3-4 days, Will Chambers, who's sitting down waiting for a phone call from Cronulla, has been not getting that phone call from John Morris, the coach. You know why? Because John Morris doesn't know what to tell the 2 centres he's got at the club if Will Chambers turns up there. There are decisions outside of just pure coaching, which we have all previously acknowledged.
You know what?
Which come in. No, which come into coaching. There are decisions as far as roster management, and sometimes you've got to make the tough call. Sometimes you've got to say things to players that they don't want to hear in order to move forward. Sean Johnson came into the Cronulla and said, "I want a 2-year, $1.6 million extension," and John Morris supported that. They then sat in their recruitment meeting, and as a recruitment committee, they said, "You know what? We don't think he will get 2 years. We'll offer him 1 year but we'll give it to about half value, right, for about 400,000. And you know what? John Morris agreed with that.
Everything you say is probably right, Paul. But I'll tell you another thing. If they were bringing in Wayne Bennett or it was Craig Bellamy or someone that had been around the block and they knew everything about coaching and they were making a change, and you'd think, well, they had to do what they had to do. But they're bringing in a guy that is not proven as a head coach. 2 years ago, Cooper Cronk sat at this desk and he spoke about Adam O'Brien and what a wonderful coach Adam O'Brien was going to be, and how he had an encyclopedia rugby league brain, he had a work ethic like Craig Bellamy, he'd worked a decade, he was a life member at the Melbourne Storm, he'd gone to the Roosters, he'd worked an assistant there. Everything said Adam O'Brien was going to be the next super coach. You know what? He might well turn out to be the next super coach, but as he's learning, there's so many parts to a head coach and the roles that you have to encounter, it takes time. Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight. So
I'm not going to continue.
Come into the same
what does
situation,
that apply to,
and he'll be learning on the run.
What does that apply to Craig Fitzgibbon and not to John Morris, who's had 2 years to get past that and hasn't got all the way past it yet?
I come back to this. If you put the two of them in a room and you say pick one, I reckon everyone at this table would pick Craig Fitzgibbon if they were given the choice.
Yeah, but if I was at the Sharks and I'd had John Morris in my system for the last 2 years...
Clearly they're not happy with him, Ben.
I get it.
Clearly they're not happy. So why persist with him? If the hierarchy of the club aren't happy with the coach,
we get
and
your
it's not
point.
running smoothly,
we get your point.
Continue?
What we're saying is that we don't understand why they're not happy with him. And look,
because he's not winning against the top teams and they want to be elite.
Okay. I'll move it forward onto Craig Fitzgibbon. Would it be fair to say he's going to come into a very different system than what he's been used to as an assistant coach?
After what we've all just said, do you think? Of course he is.
So could that present some problems for him?
Can he take Nick Politis with him?
Yeah.
Well, look, I think, you know what, this club's in a really good financial position now. It's not the club it was 5 years ago. It's very stable off the field. It's financially sound. It's got money behind it. They're ambitious. They've tried to sign Craig Bellamy. It's a different football club that he will walk into, as opposed to the Cronulla we've known for a long time. So look, it's going to be a long way removed from the Roosters, because most clubs are.
Can I ask point blank to both of you, based on what you've had to do with the chairman and the CEO, are you impressed? Steve Mace, Dino Mezzatesta, are you impressed?
With what? With what they've done today?
No, not just today, but with your dealings.
I like where they're trying to take the club. Yeah, I like the way they're talking about where they're taking the club.
I'm impressed with their ambition and what they've done off the field. I mean, that club, as I said, that club is in a better financial position than it's been ever in its history. And that's due to the CEO and the chairman. So, yeah, I think they're doing a great job.
All right, well, that was good fun. I don't know who won, but I didn't expect it to do it 2 nights in a row, but we've done it again. So you've got yourself a new coach. So Josh Hannay is going to come in as the interim coach.
Yep.
We asked the question, we don't know if there's ever been an interim coach with interim coaching experience.
Yeah, Steve Georgalis.
Steve Georgalis,
Canterbury and West Tigers. Maybe?